All right, so I want to talk to Knowles today about something I've noticed, that we have the SJWs, the social justice warriors. I think there are 10 of them. I think there are 10 people, but they have 1 million Twitter accounts. And they're the ones who kind of engineer this controversy about Ben, and the press just follows suit. But they're all kind of coming together with the Me Too movement. So it's all one big thing bent on shutting down anything that stinks of comedy or the truth. Knowles, good to see you.
How are you?
How are you? Nice jacket.
Oh, this whole thing? Yeah. Oh, thanks. I only wear the best for this show. I'm always auditioning for season 10 of Another Kingdom. I'm always...
Season 3 is in the works. I am working away.
This is great.
Yeah, no, it is. It's and I'm really, I gotta say, I'm really happy with this book. These books have been some of the best books I've done, and they just kind of write themselves. You know, I can't even take credit for them. They just sort of are there.
They're very different than everything else you've ever written.
Everything else, I know. And that's what's kind of weird about them. They solved a problem that I had, which was writing. All my old thrillers used to be about the fact that there's no way to find the truth. But after a while, I started to realize that wasn't true. In fact, almost the first line of true crime is that there is such a thing as truth, you know? And once I did that, I thought, like, well, how do you then write without being didactic and self-certain? And self-certain, and where everything is it all comes out right because you know the truth. And this book was like given to me. It just appeared in my head, and it solved that problem.
That's very interesting. That's right. That is the experience of it. Because having read, I never read novels, but I have on occasion read your novels, and it is totally different. And
it's a fresh thing, and you're doing. I hate to say it, but you're doing a great job. And he records the audiobook, so
that's true.
You can have it on your.
I knocked it out. I was locked in a cage for 75 hours recording it, and
you
now
can put it on your shelf and use it for target practice.
That's right.
So this is the thing that really gets me. No matter what the left comes up with, no matter what the truth is, and I have some sympathy with the Me Too movement. I've seen women treated like dogs throughout. I work in Hollywood, so I've seen a lot of trash like this. But no matter what they come up with, it just comes out to be a means of silencing people.
It just becomes a tool, and nowhere is this clearer than in comedy. Comedy, I think, is the center of it. Coincidentally, I was at a comedy show on Friday at the Laugh Factory. Right on Sunset, right by you. A bunch of comedians that no one has ever heard of. There were some. Whitney Cummings is kind of a known entity. Michael Rappaport was really funny. So there were some people who were good. There was a sense, though, that people were on eggshells. They were a little afraid. They had to. And these comedians, some of them were really pros. I mean, they were old pros, and you could even say they would have to preface certain jokes so as not to offend the political sensibilities of the audience.
So would they preface them by saying, I know I'm not supposed to say this, or would they preface it by saying, screw you, I'm going to say whatever I want?
Oh, it's certainly the former. Not that it's always, well, I know, and there are two sides, and so there were all of these, and there was this piece that came out in The Guardian. It said, is comedy doomed? That was the question, because you've had Kevin Hart has had to leave the Oscars for making a gay joke 10 years ago. The Oscars now doesn't have a host. This is true throughout the industry. This has affected, a lot of comedians have been washed away, not just in Me Too, but the weaponization of Me Too against certain comedians. Jerry Seinfeld doesn't play college campuses anymore. And this isn't just a Hollywood problem. I actually think that this is a generational problem. So you see, there was that awful comedy special that came out on Netflix called Nanette with Hannah Gadsby.
It was terrible.
It was really, it wasn't comedy.
I turned it off after a while,
You couldn't watch, I mean, it was tragedy. She said, I'm not going to tell jokes anymore. She actually said at one point, she said, comedy keeps people in a permanent state of adolescence, and I realized that doing comedy, I had to put myself down in order to speak.
Like my response is, okay.
That's right. Click.
I'll turn on a comedian then.
And this became very popular. I don't think anybody watched it, but politically it became popular. As a part of the culture, it became popular. This is an exclusively millennial problem. There's that great quote from Horace Walpole, the Gothic novelist.
It's good,
And he said, life is a comedy to those who think and a tragedy to those who feel. And talk about Shapiro's characterization of the generation. We are living in the tyranny of feelings right now. Right now, when you play college campuses, A lot of them require comedians to sign a speech code to say they won't talk about certain things, they won't mention certain words. You would think we were living in the 1940s or something, and it was the conservatives forcing them to do this. The reason comedy is dying is because in order to appreciate comedy, you have to have a sense of humor. And this seems obvious. Millennials don't have a sense of humor. They don't have a sense of balance or proportion. They're the most depressed, anxious, stressed generation.
They themselves say this.
They say that, I mean, this has been measured.
Yeah.
ASU did a study. A quarter of American college students are suffering PTSD from the 2016 election.
Wow.
That's not a joke. They have clinically high levels of stress.
Yeah.
Teen suicide is through the roof. Teen depression is through the roof. They're highly medicated with these depression pills. They actually are stressed out. They're out of balance. And I think that what this comes from, and where the left is really responsible, is it comes from pride. To hear Hannah Gadsby say that, to say, in order to make a self-effacing joke, I have to mock myself. So yes, correct. You got it. That's right. There was another comedian, Sophie Hagen. Never heard of her? Me neither. She said that it's so good now that comedians can't say many things and say offensive things because previously fat people wouldn't go to comedy clubs because they felt they would be picked on. And now, which I don't know. So, yeah, it's true. Sometimes you do crowd work in a comedy show. They would, she said, now no one gets picked on. Nobody is offended. Nobody is hurt. And there's this real tension here, but I think it comes from pride, which is the queen of all sins. The left exalts pride. They have the self-love movement. All of the left-wing websites talk about self-love, self-care, love yourself, never. You go to pride parades, not just gay pride parades, pride of every sort. Even we just had the March for Life over the weekend. The left no longer has safe, legal, and rare abortion. They have shout your abortion. Be proud.
Of course.
And if you're so proud, not only can you not say comedy, you can't perform comedy, like Hannah Gadsby, who doesn't want to have a little fun at her own expense, but you can't enjoy it either. You can't accept a joke, and you can't laugh at other people. It's a real, it's a society that's way out of sort, and it's out of sort because, as Chesterton frequently talked about, sometimes when you take a virtue to the exclusion of the others, it becomes a vice. And in this culture where we have self-love, self-care, it throws it all out of sorts, and you simply can't laugh.
You know, I have to say your use of the Walpole quote, excellent use of that quote. First of all, I'm a Gothic fan, so I like Walpole, but I think that is an excellent point. That it is that comedy is a kind of seeing the absurdity of life, and the absurdity of life is painful.
Yes.
It is painful to live in an absurd world. I mean, of course it is. That's part of original sin. When I go and talk to young people, one of the things that really impresses me is, first of all, they're so bright and they're so decent and all this stuff, but they have completely lost any sense of true meaning. They are shocked when you say to them, don't do what you want. Do what you're supposed to do. You know, that will make you happier in the long run. And they don't understand that without, you know, corporations, I read in Millennial actually saying this, corporations are very good at making their work seem meaningful. And so people work all the time, and then they go home and they think, well, what's my real life about? Because they think that their work is meaningful. Work is usually not all that meaningful. What is meaningful is, you know, what we know, you know, finding virtue, finding God, these are the things that bring you into your fullest life. And so your work does become meaningful then, because your work becomes part of this realization of why you were created. You talk to kids about that, and like you really have to put it in words of one syllable, because it's not inherent, it's not inculcated into their minds.
That's right, and it's no coincidence, by the way. We were all making fun of that Gillette ad last week, and how wimpy it was, and how deconstructed what masculinity is, and all of this. It is not a coincidence that all of those razor companies, not just Gillette, but other razor companies too, were putting out versions of that ad. It's no coincidence that right now Hannah Gadsby has a certain cachet, and these comedians have a certain cachet. They are responding to an audience, and that audience is millennials and Gen Z who do not understand that there is meaning. I think that's exactly the right point.
Because if the meaning is outside you, you become kind of comical.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I always say to people, you know, like, I have two rules. One is, if you want other people to take you seriously, you have to take yourself seriously. And two is, never take yourself seriously. Because who cares what other people, you know, because that is the whole thing. If it's not about you, if it's about something bigger than you, and bigger than the corporation you work for, and bigger than all your pals, and bigger than social media, then you become kind of comical. You know, you are just a broken instrument of something, of a bigger song, you know, trying to play a bigger song.
This is another Chesterton quote. The angels can fly because they can take themselves lightly. Not that they mock themselves.
That's a great quote, yeah.
But they can take themselves lightly.
Yeah, yeah.
And unfortunately, this generation, which is living in a culture that denies meaning, that's living in a self-serious, prideful culture,
yeah.
they can't take themselves seriously, and that really weighs you down.
No, it does. It's absolutely true. What are you talking about on the show?
Today, we will be talking about how the kids are all right. I will be giving a 45-minute defense of those poor kids, and I will be lambasting the Catholic Church, the conservative pundits, the mainstream media,
those Covington
everybody.
Kids, they all came after those kids. It was disgraceful.
The only adults in the room were the kids. That's right.
It's great to see you, Knowles. All right, I'll talk to you again.